Hello, welcome to Python and Education Introduction. What this video is for mainly students and teachers to learn about this new video series that I'm creating called the Python and Education video series. So I'm going to describe to you what that is, and I will talk about why using a programming language like Python makes sense in education, and not just as a programming language, but for all parts of education. And the third goal is to discuss how you can set Python up on your computer. The subsequent videos will then assume that you have it installed and will show you how to do lots of different things. So, the Python and Education video series so far has this structure. So right now, what you're watching is the introductory video. Once you're done with this, there's several other videos that you can go to. One of them is how to use Python as a simple calculator. One of the things that's really nice about Python is it's a interpreted language, so it's really easy to use and gives you very quick response and different from other languages. So I'll cover that quickly in a subsequent video, and then I'll build on that in another video and show you how to use Python as a graphing calculator. In fact, as a full scientific graphing calculator that allows you to output beautiful graphs very easily and export them to anything you want. It's so powerful in doing that I made another video that goes into more detail about how to make graphs, and lots of different types of graphs like line graphs, bar graphs, and whatever, and even an advanced version of that which goes into some of the more advanced stuff like log plots and histograms and those sorts of things. In the context of education, one of the neat things that you can do these days with the internet is download lots of data on all kinds of subjects and analyze them, and I think Python is beautiful for doing that. So another video that I have in the series is how to read in that data from a file and do something with it. So this is the overall structure. As I said, you're watching the top one up here, the introduction. And I've set this up so that if you feel like you already know what might be in this video, or you're interested in one of the other videos right away, what you can do is just click on one of these boxes and it will take you instantly to one of those other videos. So, okay, let's continue though with this video. So for those of you who don't know what Python is, let me talk about what it is and why I think Python is particularly good in an educational context. So there's lots of languages out there. What's so special about Python? So what Python is it's a free programming language. And there's two things to keep in mind there. The price is right. It's free. As long as you have a computer to put it on, there's no cost to you for the programming language or anything that it can do. And what it is it's a programming language. It's a programming language just like any other programming language, except for it has some nice features. One, it's a modern programming language. You can use it to learn programming, for example. But what I'm focusing on here is how to use Python for things other than just teaching programming, but using it in like all of your classes and all parts of your life. Python is actually a particularly easy language to learn. In fact, it was invented by modifying a language that was intended specifically for teaching. And in fact, one of the early proposals to develop Python was to develop a language that could be used by anyone. And so it's really the right language, I believe, for using in the context of an educational environment, whether you're a student or whether you're a teacher. One of the things I really like about it, like when I was first learning it, is that you could do so much with it. You almost didn't have to know very much about the language before you had very powerful tools in your hand. So if using a programming language seems intimidating, Python removes that. You can use it and not know you're using a programming language. It is a very modern, object-oriented programming language, but unlike some of the other languages, you can use it and not use that particular feature. It's really quite beautiful in that sense. And of course, from an educational perspective, it has all of the major mathematical and science functions you can imagine. Exponentials, trigonometric functions, hyperbolic functions, those are all available. In fact, I would go so far as to say pretty much everything is available. There's really no limit to what is available within the language. And in the subsequent videos, I'll show you how to use all of those features. Now, of course, because it's a programming language, it's also perfect for learning programming itself. It was designed to be easy to learn, but it is also a language that is used all over in every part of life and every part of the world. So it's really perfect for that. If you want to use it specifically for programming, that's great too. In fact, if you learn it as a calculator and a graphing calculator and use it in different classes, it's then easy to transition into a programming environment. And then finally, it has a very, very, very large user base, which means there are a lot of people that are using this language all over the world. And so you're not alone. Any question that you might have that I accidentally don't answer in this video series, you can go to the internet and almost certainly someone has had the same question you have, and you can search and you will probably find the answer to your question. So that's what it is. Now let's talk about what it can be used for. It can be used for something as simple as a calculator. And of course, every student should have access to a calculator. It's the way that someday in their life they're going to be able to control their life and do their personal finance and in a better way than they would if they weren't comfortable with using these kinds of tools. Even non-technical jobs these days use some math. It's just good to know. It's good to be able to think that way. And so we'd like to be able to put a calculator in every student's hands in the world. Third, there's even arguments that students get bogged down learning math, manipulating numbers, not learning the big picture. So we want to remove that frustration by making doing the math at the simple calculator level fun and much easier. And of course, from a practical perspective, some of the standardized tests like the ACT, SAT, and so forth allow calculators. So to give a fair advantage, we'd like to have a free calculator for every student to use to sort of level the playing field. Now, of course, we can go beyond that and think about why should everybody have a graphing calculator. And the reason I believe everybody should have a free graphing calculator in their hands is that graphing calculators are often the best way for presenting data. For example, in our time, one of the big issues is income inequality. And one of the great ways to see that is in a bar graph like this that shows the distribution of household incomes. You look at a graph like this and you instantly understand what the issue is that people are talking about today. Graphs also provide a very visual and intuitive understanding for difficult concepts. One of the other issues of our day is global climate change. And being able to look at graphs, make graphs, interpret graphs, and describe graphs makes it much easier to understand what it is that all these scientists are trying to tell us. And also, I believe that plotting data and functions is useful across many subjects. This isn't something that's just about a math class or a physics class or science class. I believe you can use this sort of capability to teach students or for students to learn subjects in any class. For example, why not use graphs in a history class, in an economics class? There's no limit on what you can do for displaying data. And finally, even in our everyday lives, for example, in a home economics type setting, using different types of graphical things reveal things to us in a way that we couldn't get them any other way. So being able to learn as a student from a young age all the way through adulthood how to do graphs and interpret graphs and make graphs is really great. And Python provides a capability to do all of this for free. So is it worth the investment to teach this? I think it's a great investment. For example, let me give you just 3 examples. Hour of Code is a program to teach people to learn how to code. And if you want to learn how to use Python as a programming language, it's built in there. It's one of the standard languages that people use. So if you want to get started with it, you can go to Hour of Code and try some of his really fun games to learn how to program with Python. It's one of the bigger languages in the world. If you want to motivate yourself or your students to learn how to program or just have a lot of fun with it, there's a whole set of modules that go into Python called Pygame, and they can be used to very quickly make video games. And that's a great way to just have fun while you're learning how to use this, if that's the direction you want to go. Similarly, if you're interested in doing more of the electrical engineering, computer science stuff, and you're interested in playing with the Raspberry Pi, the main language of the Raspberry Pi is, guess what? It's Python. Python's everywhere. So even if you only invest in using it as a simple calculator, the next video in this series, you will be rewarded by being able to use that capability in so many different areas. Okay, so let's look now to see what this looks like in terms of a scientific graphing calculator. This is an output from Python. It's a pretty simple one, and you can see that very easily you can make a graph like this. It has color. It has nice axis labels. You can put error bars. You can use this in a science experiment, biology lab, physics lab, chemistry lab, any place where you have data. You can very quickly make a beautiful graph like this with Python, and I'll show you at the end of the video how you can do this in just a few lines. It makes very fancy graphs like this. This is a color contour plot with the nice labels on the contours here for positive part of the surface and negative parts of the surface. Very easy to do these things with Python. Much better than what I was using when I was a student. Also, what makes it so powerful is not just that you can very easily make graphs like this, is that you can actually output them very quickly also. Python will typically pull up a graphical user interface like this automatically. You don't need to do anything. And it has a bunch of controls here that you can use to manipulate the graph and customize it. But the main thing is there's a button right here. You simply press this button and it exports the graph to, say, a PNG file. You can send it out on the internet. You can put it in Keynote or PowerPoint or Word or Pages or wherever you want in just one click of a button. And it's highly customizable. You can, for example, change the background color to gray. You can make all the curves have different colors. This one's a solid yellow. This one's blue squares, red circles. You can make circles with a line between them. You can change the color of the labels here. And I'm going to show you how to do all of this stuff. It's so easy. You can even say hello to your mother with this. Very powerful. Okay, so now that you're convinced that you want to use this in all parts of your life, let's see how you go about getting it. Okay, so there are some subtleties, and I'm going to point all of those out. So there's two issues with downloading this that I want to say up front. First of all, be sure to download the appropriate module. So however you're going to use this, if you use it as a simple calculator, you don't care about this. But the more advanced you get, what you want to pay attention to is that there are these modules that provide huge amounts of capability for you. And some of the examples I use in the later videos use some of these. So just make sure that you have them. And later in this video, I will show you how to make sure that you can have all these modules without actually thinking too much about it. You pretty much get them automatically. But I just want to reduce the frustration. If something doesn't work, it could be because of this. But as I said, later I will address that issue. The other subtlety with Python is to pay attention to the version number. There's actually, at the moment, two versions of Python, Python 2 and Python 3. Python 3, obviously, is the newer version, and it has some non-trivial changes to the language, and I don't really want you thinking about this or bothering with it. It's something that when you're just getting started, you really don't want to deal with. So what I'm going to tell you is it's best to start with 2, and I think as of this video, it's 2.7. And so that's the one that you're going to want, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And the reason that I recommend using the older one is for two reasons. One, it's still being developed. It's not like it's dead. And the second reason is everything that you're going to find out on the web, almost, and all of the libraries you're going to find out there have been developed for many, many, many years under 2, and so everything's going to work better. Of course, people are continuously developing for Python 3, and someday this will change. So if you're watching this video, and this video is very old, everything I just said is most likely going to be different. But at the time I'm releasing this video, just make sure that you get Python 2, and for now, everything's going to be a lot easier. But when I show you how to actually get this on your machine, hopefully you won't have to worry about either of these issues. I just wanted to draw your attention to them. Okay, so let's continue thinking about how to get Python. So how do you go about getting it? So if you're working on a Linux machine or a Unix machine of any kind, you already have it. Almost every installation of Unix ships with Python. So you need to do nothing but go in and just make sure you have it. Most likely it's already there. If, on the other hand, you're using a Mac OS X, you also already have it. So not only is it free, it's already installed on your machine. So you can just go to a terminal window and type Python and it will be there. And I'll show you that in a minute. The one area where it's a little bit different is for PCs. In this case, you're going to have to go out and download it. It doesn't ship with it. And so in the next little bit, I will show you how to go about doing that. It's actually rather easy. And if you're doing some computer science, electrical engineering project with your Raspberry Pi, of course, as I said, you also already have it. In fact, you will have Python 2 and Python 3 on your Raspberry Pi. So it's almost everywhere. Okay, so if you have a PC, what you're going to do, I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail in a bit, but what you simply do is you go through to python.org, downloads, Windows, and you click on a link for which one you want, 2.7.9 or 3.4.2. And as I said, go for the 2.7.9 because most things automatically work for that and life will be a lot easier. So it's fairly easy to get this, but let me go into that in a little bit more detail. Okay. A much nicer way to do it, you can do that. You can go to the Python webpage and get Python. But what I recommend actually is using distributions. And what that is you have a company who makes a package that has everything in it and it makes it super easy to use. So one of those is Enthought, is one of those companies that does that. And what they do is they make a distribution where you simply click on a button and you get a free Python distribution. And it has 3 advantages. One, you simply click this button and it installs it on your machine and you don't have to think about anything. And I've done this many times on different machines, mainly Macintosh, Apples, and it's always worked perfectly every time. I didn't have to deal with any issues. The second thing that's nice about doing it with a distribution is it automatically contains all of these packages. In fact, it contains so many packages you won't even know what they're for. So that avoids having to deal with that issue that I mentioned earlier. And the third nice thing about using a distribution like the Enthought distribution is it builds a graphical environment in which you can work. So you don't have to worry about using an editor, which can be awkward, or using a terminal window. If you want to avoid that and use what's called an interactive development environment, or IDE, this comes with one. Python comes with one as well, called idle. But when you get a distribution like this, you get an IDE that's a lot fancier and a lot nicer. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, Enthought's not the only company that does this. Continuum Analytics has another distribution, which is called Anaconda. And you can go get that, obviously, for free. Here's the little button you click on for Mac OS X, and you might want to do that. So, like, for example, I typically use a Mac, and even though my Mac had Python on it, I could easily use it, and I could develop whatever I'm doing in idle, the IDE that comes with Python. Rather than doing that, I actually tend to use Canopy because it provides this nice distribution that has everything I need, and I simply don't need to worry about it. Just press a button, and it just works right out of the box. So keep that in mind. It's a great way to get everything for free without dealing with the normal installation procedure you might have. Okay, so how does one set this up? Let's go through this again. Look at your computer that you have. Again, if it's a Unix system or a Mac system, then you're in luck. You already have Python. But what if you want to update it or upgrade it, or you have a PC? Okay, you're just going to connect your computer to the internet, and you're going to go out there and you're going to install it. This is the Mac OS X installation page. And as you can see, you can either do 2.79 or 3.4.2. as of this video, you want this one, or you put a distribution in, Anaconda or Canopy from Continuum Analytics or Enthought, and you have it on your machine. Now, how do you use it? There's several ways of using Python once you have it on your machine. Okay, so let's go through that. The three general ways you can use it are to use an editor. And if you're just beginning, I don't recommend you do it this way, but just wanted to mention it. If you have an editor, you go in and you type some lines into your script, and then you save that script and you run it at the command line, and it will execute that and make your graph or whatever it is that you're doing. This requires learning how to use an editor like this and so forth, and how to run Python outside of the editor. You could do it that way. Another way is to use what I mentioned earlier, an interactive development environment, or IDE, and that's much nicer because they typically are created specifically for doing the kinds of things that are in this video series. Like what I'm showing you here in this picture is idle. That's the IDE that comes with Python, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a minute, but I just wanted to show you what that looks like. And like I said, what's nice about it is it's made for doing this. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes working at a terminal window, you can also run Python that way. And that actually is quite nice because if you just want to try something really quick, or you're using Python just as a simple calculator, this is really a really nice way to do it. So I will show you also how to do it that way. Okay. So let's suppose you're going to use an editor. There's lots of different text editors out there, Emacs, TextMate, Vim. You need to have an editor, and if you have an editor like this, then you can write your Python commands into the script, and you can run them that way. This has the overhead. You have to learn how to get an editor and download it and have it all ready, and that is definitely one approach that you can follow. I actually do this sometimes myself. I actually do all of these methods because they all have their uses, but this is probably the one that I use the least. Okay, or you can use an IDE. So here's that IDE I talked about earlier. This is called Idle. This is the one that comes with Python, so it's free and it's already available once you have Python. If you have a Mac or a Unix machine, you already have this. Notice it's two different windows. One of them has a command prompt here. I'll talk about that later. And one of them has a text editor. And so you get this free text editor. It's actually really easy to use. Simple, but that's good. And so you get both of these. Okay, another example. This is one called PyCharm. It's a more sophisticated one, a professional level IDE. If you don't want to deal with a learning curve, you definitely want to avoid something like this. But if you see that you're going to be doing Python for a long time in your life, it's probably worth learning something like this. I've used this. I like it. And so it's nice. In fact, sometimes I like to use idle because it's very simple, but if you're doing something more complicated, something like this could be useful. The one I actually personally use the most, as I mentioned earlier, is this one, which is the one from Enthought, which is Canopy. And so this is the IDE you get for free when you do the installation of the Enthought Canopy distribution. So not only do you get the Python language, you get all of the packages, and you get this IDE. It's all free, and it's just a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to use this IDE. And in fact, it's not very hard, and once you get used to this, it's actually really wonderful to use. So those are three examples of IDEs that you can use. Okay, so let me talk about idle. I want to mention idle first because it's the easiest one to use, and it's the one that comes with Python, so you probably already have it. And it's super, super nice. Okay, so here's how it works. As I showed earlier, there's two windows that could pop up. The first one up there on the left is the one that has a command line. And what's nice about this is that you just type something and hit return. As I mentioned earlier, Python's an interpreted language, so you get instant response when you want to do something. And in the next video, I'll talk about how to use Python as a calculator. This is the way you can use Python as a calculator. Just pull it up, a window like this, and you just start typing things and it just starts giving you answers. So I often just have one of these windows open all the time so that when I need to compute something, I just pop that window up, get my answer, and move on to what I'm doing. And so I can get quick response. Now, if I want to do something over and over again, what I'll do is I'll use the editor. So this editor here, this is a simpler version, something I wrote. And what's nice about this is that if I have a few commands and I want to see them and I want to possibly change them, what's nice about having an editor is that I can save this, and then next time I need to make a graph that looks like this makes this graph. If I want to do this again or change it somehow, like, I don't want to do sine, I want to do cosine, I simply pull this file back up in the editor. I change all of these from sine to cosine, and I get a new graph. I press this, I save it in my report, and I'm off and running. And so there's really advantages to doing things both in the command line and in the editor. And easy to get graphical output, easy to save it. Just within seconds, you can make a graph and have it exported wherever you want it. Okay, what if you want to do it in a terminal? So if you want to do it in a terminal, you go into a terminal window, you type Python. Python should come up. This is a great way to test to see if you have it on your computer. And then you can just simply start typing commands into the interpreter, and it will execute those commands. So here's how you do a print statement in Python, but you can also use it as a simple calculator. Watch the next video in this series and I'll go into that in a lot more detail. So this is a way to get really quick response. Okay, so you are ready. Get Python installed on your machine. Here I give two quick examples that you can use to sort of debug your system. The first one is a statistics example which plots a histogram. And if you go into your Python interpreter, type these few lines, you will instantly see a plot of a histogram, and you will save it in a file, and you can email it to whoever you want to show them that you can make beautiful graphs in Python in a matter of seconds. Now, if you want to plot mathematical functions, which comes in handy in a lot of different areas, I give an example here. Type these lines in. You will get a plot up on your screen. You will also have that saved as a PNG file on your computer where you can email it around or put it in a report very simply. And what it does is, this is the function, this polynomial right here gets plotted, and you can change that to whatever function you want, whatever polynomial you want, and you get that. So this is a good way to quickly see how you can get output and test your machine to make sure that everything is working. Okay, so what next? So as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, you just watched the introductory video, and so now the rest of the videos that are in the series, at least at the moment, I will be adding to these later, are these videos. They should be there and available. And as I said, you can just click on a box and you can go to that video. So one of the other things that I did when I set this up is all of the plots that are discussed in all of these videos and the code that goes with them, I've set those up on Google Drive so that you can go look at the plots yourself and get the code so you don't have to type it in yourself. And so feel free to go to the New Planet School Google Drive and just click on the folders there, and you should see all the plots for all of the different lectures in this video series, and you can get the code so you don't have to type them in yourself. So very, very simple to use. I hope that's helpful to you. Okay, and with that, it's the end of this video. Hope to see you back here very soon.